Welcome back to the HOG-POD for this, our second video episode of 2023. As part of a month-long focus on females and motorcycles, we take a closer look at the challenges and contributions that thankfully more and more females are making in the world of motorcycles. As with many sports, motorcycling could be seen as a hugely male-dominated environment.
And this has been especially true when it comes to the world of Harley-Davidson. But as always in life, there are rule makers and there are rule breakers. And today we're joined by one of the most prominent females in motorcycling today. And she's from right here in the UK and Ireland. And I'm absolutely stoked to welcome, in fact, I can hardly believe I'm going to say this, but welcome to the show, Vanessa Rock, a.k.a. the girl on a bike.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Does that mean you're trying to say I'm a rule breaker? I think I'm really well behaved.
Oh, you are definitely breaking the mold. Definitely breaking the mold.
I would say that mold has been well and truly broken with you, Vanessa.
So thanks so much for joining us today, Vanessa.
Absolute pleasure. I'm honoured that you want me on the show. It's great.
Well, probably the easiest way to start here is you know you best. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm genuinely just a normal little human from the UK. I grew up in Kent. I had pretty sort of normal upbringing life. Went to university, got my job. And then something really dramatic happened to me and it really changed my life. And out of that started a very new perspective to life. And I'd now describe myself as a motorcycle rider, racer and adventurer. I'm completely addicted to life on two wheels. But a lot of people, when they sort of see me riding and doing some of the hard enduro races, rallies, etc. that I do, think, oh, wow, she must have been riding since she was like 3. That's not the reality. I just think what happened to me earlier in my life, back in 2014, was so life-changing. It's given me a bit of a new fire to try and make the most of every day. And in the process of doing that, I sort of started some social media channels as well on a mission to try and connect with other people and to share what I go through in my life. And the reality is that a lot of the time when you're on social media, you get this like life is perfect and shiny and look how beautiful and wealthy and amazing my life is. And it's like, I'm sorry, but that's not true. And so I kind of make it my mission to share the ups, the downs, the reels, the days where the chronic pain that I live with is making me cry, or I haven't got the motivation, or, you know, all of the wins and successes and stuff. So, I mean, in a short answer to your question, I'm a professional motorcycle rider and addicted to life on two wheels, which includes a Harley-Davidson in my garage, which is probably quite relevant for your audience. And she's called Thug.
On reading your website, there's a story on your website, thegirlonabike.com, that you had quoted saying it was at this point that you discovered Harley-Davidson. And in fact, that you had said that Harley-Davidson was your salvation. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of those lines that sounds really cliche, really staged, really marketing. But the reality is that it's totally true. So in order to answer that question, I probably need to tell you a little bit about what happened to me. So in 2014, I was cycling home from work, which is what I did every day. Rain, shine, wind, hail, everything. I got on my bicycle and I cycled to work and back 16 miles a day. It was a standard Tuesday. I was actually on the way to the wakeboarding lake to meet my husband to go wakeboarding for the evening because I was pretty addicted to extreme sports, kite surfing, mountain biking, rock climbing, wakeboarding, snowboarding. And anyway, I got on my bicycle heading out of central Oxford and I got about a mile down the road. Traffic lights turned green up in front of me and I'm pedaling on. And unfortunately, the car coming the other way decided not to stop at their red light and they cut straight across in front of me and left me with nowhere to go. And like that, life as I knew it changed. Now, I wasn't a bleeding mess on the side of the road or anything like dramatic. Pretty shaken up. I'd just been hit by a car and I went off to hospital in an ambulance, discharged later that night with bruising. Now, if we fast forward 7 years, and 7 years was really the bulk of my recovery, I have now got a reconstructed right shoulder and right hip. I've had 7 surgeries, which worked out as 1 surgery a year for 7 years. So it was kind of like a roller coaster of a recovery. Not a roller coaster in like a fun way with like loads of highs and squeals and waving. In a ups and a downs kind of way, is a roller coaster where I'd have surgery, I'd be bedbound, I'd be stuck looking at that same annoying bit of paint on my bedroom ceiling. I'd need somebody to help me get to the toilet, put my socks on, brush my hair, feed me. And then there'd be times where I was getting a little bit more active, a little bit more able, maybe not to the point where I could ride a bicycle, but to the point where maybe I could get on a motorbike. And so relatively early on, a couple of years in, I decided to get a motorcycle. Now, it didn't start with the Harley-Davidson. It actually started with me coming up with the idea that a motorcycle was going to be a great way to get to work because I could no longer cycle. The traffic, the parking, the cost of fuel, the time just sat there in the car with hip pain in a car in a right angle. Even today, it hurts me more being in a car than it does on a motorbike. Now, at this point of time where I came up with this crazy idea over a gin and tonic with my husband on a Friday night, Vanessa's brain wasn't really thinking about the repercussions of what getting a motorcycle actually meant. I had been medically diagnosed with multiple mental health disorders in the aftermath, and one of them was fear of the road, which doesn't really lend itself to a motorcycle. But I'm starting to realize in life, like, that escalated is quite a good tagline for me. My friends keep firing at me, and I'm like, maybe this is true. I just jump in, and what's the worst that can happen? I could fail, it could go wrong, but at least maybe I'll grow, maybe I'll learn something. And so anyway, I came up with the idea to get this little bike, and I got a little 600 Bandit to commute on. Absolutely terrified me, and I can go into more on that whole process, but I can tell you that even 8 years on now, I still have moments on the road where, like, that accident scene comes back as fresh as it was the day it happened, which is horrible. I battled night terrors for probably 5.5, 6 years, where some nights I'd have 1, 3, 5 night terrors, waking up screaming. Mentally, the recovery from the accident, despite 2 reconstructed body parts, the mental journey was probably worse. I am still aware of the question that you asked me about Harley-Davidson. So on our honeymoon, my husband and I randomly rode Harley-Davidsons in Texas, and we did Palo Canyon, Midpoint Cafe, a few random things. And for one of our wedding anniversaries post the accident, after I'd got the Suzuki Bandit, I decided to just organise for 2 Harley-Davidsons for an afternoon because we'd missed our anniversary because my husband was in Afghanistan with the Royal Air Force. And I thought, well, that would be a nice thing to do. We'll just borrow these 2 Harleys from Abingdon, Harley-Davidson, who were just superb, by the way. They didn't even bat their eyelids. They were just like, yeah, you can take them out for a test ride. Be as long as you like. Here's a nice route. I knew what they were thinking, though, because all you need to do is put your bum on a Harley-Davidson, and then suddenly it's like got into your bank account, and then it's in your driveway. So we had zero intention to buy, to me being like, I need that bike in my life. Yeah. Now, I joke about it, but the reality is that I was at a point in my life where I didn't really see the point of much. My world, my friendship circles was all around sports. You realise who your friends are very quickly. The ones that will sit next to your hospital bed or come and play board games on a Saturday and not go off kite surfing. So there's loads of people I've never even seen again. And then the fact that I couldn't do any of those sports, I didn't do spa breaks or city tours. Like, what was the point in holidays? Like, what am I going to do at the weekend? If I was back at work, what's the point of taking time off work? And then this Harley-Davidson was like a really big, comfortable sofa with a soul that kind of set my soul on fire. It had that potato, and I could sit on that Harley with less pain than I could sit in a car seat. But I could have adrenaline, I could have some wind in my hair, and I could be out of the house. Now, over the years, there was months and months, years where I couldn't ride a bike, where I had to have more surgery. But every time I had more surgery, I was always on this mission to get back on the bike. And so over those first, I think, 3.5 years from getting Thug, my Dyna Street Bob, 2015, over those following years, I think I did something like 20,000 miles on her. we got a 48 Sportster for my husband, which had a lot of vanity tax, especially for his bottom. Particularly when we did 3,500 miles in one go to Croatia and round, he definitely had a sorer bottom than me, and I had to be Bowser carrying spare fuel for him. But it was just this new form of adventure, and I still remember the first night we ever actually went, or first time we went on our first proper adventure, having got the two bikes, and we rode 6 miles from my house because that's all I could handle with my body. We had our little camp for a tent, we had a little barbecue, a campfire, we had a bottle of wine, we had some steak. And it was like this awakening of a completely new sense of gratitude. Now, for Vanessa, prior to the accident, this would have been the lamest Friday night you could possibly imagine. Like, sat in a field, watching the sun go down. Like, how dull is this? Why aren't we on a rock face or kite surfing until the dark comes in and you can't see? But for where I was in my life at that time, I felt so incredibly alive because I was out of the house. I was with my soulmate. I had a fire. It was beautiful. I wasn't looking at that ceiling. And it made me realize that actually in those really awful moments where you think there's just nothing to live for and that the world is really dark and black, actually there's always something that you can find to be grateful for. And I think that awakening that night is what started our adventures. Like, my husband could have easily gone back kite surfing and climbing and wakeboarding without me, but he actually turned around to me because I tried to make him go without me. And I didn't have the mental strength to even be at the lake or go to the beach. I couldn't be around it. I just would break down because I wanted to do it, and I was broken, pathetic mess. But he actually turned around to me and said, why would I want to go kite surfing without my soulmate? It wouldn't be fun without you. And so instead of just leaving me, we kind of found new things to do. And for a while, that was board games and card games and Netflix. And then it was touring on our Harley-Davidsons, which was like a big, comfortable sofa. So, yeah, we racked up the miles doing that. We made new friends. We've been to countries that we would never have gone to before. And it was kind of really the start of me, well, my addiction to motorcycles, probably, because the Suzuki Bandit didn't make me addicted to riding a motorbike. That was purely a tool to get to work and back, which I hated because it scared me. But when you're on a Harley, you've got so much more road presence as well. And my thug is a little bit thug life-like. She's quite loud. She's quite big. And so if at any point you do feel like, oh, maybe you can't, has he seen me? You can just do a little bit of a little throaty open. And they know you're there. So I actually feel safer on a motorbike than a bicycle, which I think a lot of people don't realise. I know my mum certainly was not too impressed at the idea of me getting a motorbike. Nearly died on the road, bicycle, why? This doesn't make sense. But actually you're a kind of a recognised user of the road, like you're entitled to be there because you pay your road tax. I put my fingers in the air as I say that for the podcast, just so you know. So we obviously know it's not that. You are bigger, you've got sound, you've got more road presence, you're wearing the right kit. Like, you ride a bicycle in Lycra, for goodness sake, and you're on tarmac, often easily going 20 miles an hour on some of the straights, and a car can go 50 miles an hour and hit you, even if you're going 5. And then, of course, you've got the power of the engine as well. So if you're somewhere where you don't want to be because something's coming towards you, you've got the opportunity to power out of there as well, or on a motorbike. So that was kind of quite a long-winded answer to your question as to how Harley really transformed the world that I lived in. And it really ignited the start of a whole new horizon I didn't even see existed.
To be honest with you, Vanessa, there's a reason that I asked you that question, and I totally get where you're coming from. That how it does have the ability to change your life, and to change your entire outlook in life. Myself, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2016. Thankfully, now I'm in remission. But I hadn't rode a motorbike in 30 years. And just scrolling through Facebook one day, I spotted this Heritage Classic from a guy in Darlington in England. And literally within 2 seconds of seeing it, I went, I'm going to ring that guy.
Uh-oh, it starts.
And 10 minutes later, I had it bought. 2 days later, I was in Darlington picking it up. And I remember looking at the bike, and the guy had said to me, well, what do you think of your bike? And I went, it is absolutely breathtaking. But up here, I'm going, how am I going to get that bike 200 mile up the road? But from that moment, see that feeling that you're talking about, that feeling of freedom and the wind in your hair and the euphoria, and it really did change my life. You know, it changed my whole outlook on life, you know.
There's something you said there, Vanessa, which is it really rings true. You said about how whenever you sit on a Harley-Davidson, it somehow gets the pin to your bank, and next thing you know. So my wife, who is a lifelong avoider of motorcycles, wouldn't entertain it at all. I've ridden bikes since I was 17. And I remember it was a milestone birthday of hers. I was like, do you know what? She's going to go on a motorcycle. And I went down to our dealership, which is the Belfast dealership, and hired a Heritage. And I rang her and said, I'm on my way home. You're coming out on a motorbike. And she was like, you know, no chance. Rocked up on this Harley-Davidson. Needless to say, 2 weeks later, there was 2 of them in my garage.
That just gave me goosebumps.
She just fell in love, as in, like, you know, oh my God, what have I been missing? And see, now because we have young kids, it's the only time in the world where because we have our helmets connected and we can have an uninterrupted conversation, and it has to be at 50 or 60 miles an hour around a country road near, you know, where I live. I'm very, very, very lucky in Northern Ireland because we don't have to ride to the place we want to ride. We can literally just out of our doorstep, and we've got these great roads. And it's the only time that we can have this totally undisturbed conversation. So I just smiled whenever you said about, you know, the Harley. I know what they were at. They don't have to sell you Harley-Davidsons, because once you sit in it, they've got you, you're doomed. And
all they need to do is get bums on seats. The rest just happens. Sneaky people.
The one thing about Harley-Davidson is, and I'm sure it's the same for all brands of motorbikes, but it appears to be a massively male-dominated area. How do people react to you getting your first Harley?
Oh, goodness. It's hilarious. The double takes you'd get when they'd be like, wait, you're riding that? Because my Harley's like, 320 kilos? It's just shy of 1,700 cc, which is probably bigger than your average car. But, like, you don't hold the weight of a bike. I mean, none of us would be riding huge bikes if that was the case, because no offense, but a lot of the guys aren't that strong either. They just think they are. Once it's off a pivot point, yeah, you're going to drop it. But you very rarely, you hope, fingers crossed, have a bike leaning over. When it's upright, they're super stable. The weight's generally pretty low. So I guess I found it pretty entertaining, because I suppose there's a tendency for females to go towards the smaller models, like the Sportsters or the Irons, etc. But man, the Street Bob just spoke to me, and obviously I do a lot of riding on the Pan America now, and some of the big bikes. It just doesn't faze me, because I think the biggest thing that for anyone listening here, especially if you're a female, is to realize that the big bikes aren't as hard or as big as you think they are, because the balance, the weight, everything's just designed to make them work as bikes. And actually, they've got an amazingly low seat height. If you start taking like a Street Bob or something and then comparing it to, a big adventure bike or a street bike or any other things, the Harleys are actually such a manageable package because they're cruisers. They're much less sort of intimidating as far as the ride position. So I suppose I definitely got sort of the double takes. And then you add that I am quite a small little girl with really long eyelashes and blonde hair. I just find it entertaining. It's all about breaking the molds. Oh, I don't have any tattoos either, but I did buy a tassel at the Portoroz Hog Rally. I thought it was time.
Yeah. You see, this is what this is all about, Vanessa. You know, I mean, it's dispelling, just as you just hit upon there, this myth that women bikers are big and burly and tattooed and snarl at you and growl at you and whatnot. It's absolutely not like that at all. You know?
I'll growl at you though. No, I won't. Yeah, it's so. That's the problem with stereotypes, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, some parts of it are true, but I think in the last couple of years, it's changing a lot. It's changing a lot in the Harley scene and in the whole motorbike scene as a general area. When I think about some of the races that I do, a couple of years ago, very often if I rocked up at a hard enduro race, which for anyone listening who's not really aware of what hard enduro means, it's off-road motorcycles, high performance, full suspension race machines that you're going through some really ridiculous terrain, like hill climbs, rocks, over logs, ditches, banks, in the mud and the wet, and there's sweat and there's swearing, and it's disgustingly sadistic, but hugely satisfying, but brutally hard. And a few years ago, I'd rock up at a race and almost certainly I'd be the only female. Maybe there'd be one or two, whereas over the last couple of years, there's more and more, which is absolutely incredible to see. And it's one of the things that makes me more motivated to share what I'm doing, because I think as a small female doing this stuff, girls can look at me and be like, wow, well, if Vanessa can do it, I can do it. And particularly when you think I've got 2 reconstructed body parts and I only started off-road riding like 6 years ago. But I think the other magical part is that guys can look at me as well and they'll be like, Vanessa can do it. Why can't I give it a try? Like, come on, look at her. And they can get out and give it a go as well.
I'm sure you prick a few egos, actually, whenever you do these hard enduro races, and there's inevitably going to be guys that don't make it to the finish line, and then you rock up built like the side of a pound coin, and I've done it. I'm sure
you go.
I'm sure there's a few. I'm sure there's a few pricked egos, all right. Obviously, just going back to your the mental side of your recovery, if you don't mind. You said it a number of times in that, and I think anyone that struggled with a mental challenge, whether it's crisis or whether it's protracted lifelong, what's the point? What's the point? And you said that a few times, and I mean, you've been kind enough to share, and me and Jared, we've had our own, in our own lives, we've been at our points of feeling exactly the same, but. There was your story featured in the HOG magazine, and there was a fantastic line in it where you say, when people say recovery, you typically think of returning to how you were before the accident, but there's no going back. You do not merely recover, you reinvent yourself. And I think this speaks volumes about your mindset. How important do you think a positive mental mindset is when it comes to recovering from physical injuries?
More important than anything, because without a positive focus for your mind, your body won't recover. So I was not doing very well. I was in a bad way physically. I was in a bad way mentally. I didn't even see myself as me. I got diagnosed with something called change disorder. There's a few different things, but change disorder was one of them. And for me, that manifested in me not seeing myself as me. I talked about myself in the third person. Vanessa was this like strong, fit, capable person from pre-accident. Like she could kite surf and do push-ups, and she was capable. And the pathetic, broken, painful mess of a body that I was in wasn't me. And I didn't see myself as me. It was really confusing for other people because they'd be like, wait, what? Who's Vanessa? I thought you were Vanessa, because I'd literally talk about myself in the third person. And I wasn't doing very well. And eventually I got to a point where I went, you know what? I'm not okay and I need help. And I am so proud of myself for realizing that I needed help, because I think for anyone struggling with anything, having the strength to say, you know what? I'm not okay, I need help, is the biggest sign of strength. And so if anyone listening is struggling with anything, go and ask for help. There's help in all different areas. It could be a stranger down your street, or an auntie or a friend, or someone you don't even know in the therapy world, whoever it is that you feel comfortable talking to, find someone to talk to. So I went and got help, and I wish I could tell you that when you ask for help, there's like this big red button and it's like, boom, the world's fixed. There isn't. It takes time, commitment, energy, work, and for me, a lot of crying, a lot of processing emotionally, and it certainly didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. But eventually, I started to work through the pain, the anger, the upset. I mean, even things like the anger towards the driver. I mean, she completely took my life away from me and irreversibly changed my body and my pain in my body for the rest of my life. My home will never be the same again because of her. But me being angry at her changes absolutely nothing. All it does is mean that I live with that horrible, twisted in your chest. That, you know, when you think about something that makes you angry, you get that inside, and that comes out physically. And so learning to process and forgive and move on, accept things are accidents, all of that kind of stuff was huge. But the acceptance of my situation was probably the most critical part, because without accepting your situation, it's honestly, I think it's nigh on impossible to move on out of it. Because until you accept it, you're not going to be able to start doing the things that will help you change it or find the best in the situation or grow and come out of it. You know, if you're sitting there in denial, moping about in bed, feeling sorry for yourself, feeling angry, feeling pathetic, why me? It's not fair. I wish I could change it. You're just going to mope about and watch Netflix. Whereas when you start to go, you know what? It's happened. I can't change it. There's nothing I can do about it. This is where I am. This is my life right now. Do I want to be like this forever? No. Well, you have control now. You didn't have control then. You're where you are. But you have control right now to change your moving forwards. And at that point, you can start to go, right, well, what does my body need? Oh, I should do my physio. Because if I don't do my physio, it's not going to get better. My pain's not going to get better. I'm not going to improve. If I don't drag my bottom out and get to the swimming pool 6 days a week for 3 months after all 5 of my hip surgeries and walk up and down in the shallow end, then I'm not going to be able to walk outside the pool. I have to do the work. If I don't put the work in, I'm not going to get anywhere. So it's that kind of mindset of accepting, taking ownership of what you have in your control and doing something about it. And I think the key thing that I found in that mental journey was something called mindfulness. Now, a lot of people, when you say mindfulness, will go, oh, we're going to sit on the floor with crossed legs and hum. I'm not the sort of person that sits and hums. I get like ants in my pants, itchy feet, whatever you want to call it. But mindfulness for me was the realization that I am in control of what is going on in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds really obvious, but if you take me prior to the accident, I was a result of my surroundings. If someone upset me or did something, I felt that. I took that on. I'd be angry. You know, if someone cuts you up on the road, I'd be angry and I'd be annoyed. Doesn't matter what they're doing, whatever. I don't need to be angry and upset my day because of someone else's actions. And that's me realizing that actually, I don't need to be angry right now. Life's too short. I'm going to be like 5 seconds later on my journey because of him. What's it matter? And so learning to be more aware of my conscious thoughts, such as my initial trigger thoughts for the fact that I'm hurting. Now, this is a really good one for how I use mindfulness pretty much every day, a few times a day. It's my initial trigger thoughts of the fact that my hip's hurting. I have 2 options. I either engage my mindfulness or I don't. Now, if I don't, and I let that thought of, oh, my hip really hurts, stay in my mind, I'll then start to think, well, this sucks. My body's rubbish. Why can't my body be different? Why does it have to hurt? Why did the accident have to happen? This isn't fair. I'm really angry. I'm annoyed. I'm upset with myself. And I just go round and round in this downward spiral until I'm upset and I'm crying. And then my husband will be upset because I'm upset. And at the end, I've got the exact same pain in the exact same body, but now I'm upset. Whereas by using mindfulness to recognize that initial trigger thought, I'm able to go, no, Vanessa, we're not even going to go there. You know your hip hurts. You live with it. What can you do right now to help that? Do you need to sit down? Do you need to stand up? Do you need to do some physio? Do you need to take a painkiller? What is it that you can do right now? But we are not going there on feeling sorry for yourself, because all you're going to do is upset yourself. It is what it is. Accept it. What can you do? Move on. And that's kind of like a nutshell example of how I use mindfulness to sort of cope with the pain. But what I've realized, and it's something that I talk about in my schools program, so I'll go into any school in the UK that will have me, and I do motivational speaking to try and help engage and help the future generations. One thing is I realized is that whole process of coping with my pain works with stress and anxiety and fears, and trying to break down the situation that you're in. And instead of just being overwhelmed by it all, work out what is the actual information, what are the facts, and what is my brain worst case scenario and overthinking and blowing it up. And one of the things I love doing, especially with primary school kids, is saying, who's scared of spiders? And they're like, oh, spiders, terrifying. And they're all like squealing, and the whole room just goes all terrified of these spiders. And I'm like, okay, cool, we're scared of spiders. So what's a spider going to do to you? And all their little faces are like, it could crawl on me. And I'm like, okay, this is true. A spider could crawl on you. And if we go to Australia, we're going to cancel this whole conversation. In the UK, what does it matter if a spider crawls on you? It can't hurt you. It's not going to, they don't bite. It's not poisonous. And then their little faces are like, maybe I don't need to be scared of spiders. And I've legit had messages from kids 2 weeks after I've done this talk, and they're like, I moved a spider today. And I wasn't scared of it anymore. Because by breaking down the situation of something that maybe society has told us is terrifying, we can actually realize that, you know what? There's nothing to be scared of. Yet it was body-consumingly terrified beforehand. And it's all part of learning to control your conscious thoughts. And by controlling the conscious ones, all the ripples through to your subconscious, through to your emotions, are linked to it. Sorry, I'm very good at just kind of talking when you ask me questions.
Vanessa, I've got something written here in front of me, okay? So I read a review about one of your speaking events, which read, not even ironically, very much the case, Jared, and you're going to agree with this. This was the quote: I have never seen a group of guys so captivated by a mental health related conversation. And that was someone speaking about you having just delivered a talk to a group of guys. I have never seen Jared quiet for as long as he has been there. He didn't even open his mouth. Vanessa, that is a gold medal for you, because I think you must be one of the first people ever.
Absolutely, because, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was diagnosed in 2016, Vanessa, when someone initially comes to you and says those words, you have cancer, boom, your whole world just implodes. Yeah. And you don't know where to go. You don't know anything about the cancer. You don't know whether you're gonna. I mean, I remember it was November 2016, and I remember looking at my grandson, who was only 6 months old, and I remember saying, I don't know where I'm going to see you at Christmas. And it was that moment that I took on exactly what you're talking about. You have, and it is about choices. And there are really only two choices. You can either lie down and die, or you can get up and fight. I chose the latter. And you do that every day. And sometimes it's about the moments that you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, do you know something, I can't be bothered today. But those are the days that you have to motivate yourself. Those are the days that you have to get up and you have to fight. And it's a long-winded battle. So I could gel with every word that you said there, Vanessa. And it's an amazing outlook on life. And and so many people can take that on board. So many people can take that on board. But I want to ask you a question. If looking back on your adventures, yeah, and your adventures during your recovery, if you were to pick three highlights, what would they be and why?
As far as really key moments for my going through my mental health journey, I'd say the first big trip I did on Thug, it was with Gary at Tour One, who does the official Harley-Davidson tours, and we did his Altitude with Attitudes tour with me and my husband, and there was a moment up, I think it was something like the Furka Pass, right up at the top, and you've got this backdrop that looks like a green screen, and I'd ridden my bike all the way out there. I was with a group of people who I still talk to, some of those people now, the sort of friends that you make for life. And it was just this like realization of the world's okay. Like I've been through a really hard time and I've got more surgeries to come, but like this moment will live on for a really long time kind of energy. I don't know if I'm kind of describing it, but there was just this huge sense of gratitude of, if my accident hadn't happened, I would never have been stood at the top of that pass with a motorcycle with my husband. And that was kind of a cool realization. I think the latter kind of high points for me are the achievements that I've managed to do, pushing myself physically and mentally. So making it to the end of the Tunisia Desert Challenge back in April last year. There's a full YouTube series of this. It's pretty much 3 episodes of me crying and just about surviving in the desert. I had a night with a campfire. When my bike broke, I ended up having to be heli evacuated. Pretty near-death experience, but I kept fighting and I kept going with that race. Hardest thing I've ever done. I remember one of the days, my heart rate, no matter how much I rested for about a 3-hour period, I could not get it below 150. My max heart rate hit 184. But I made it to the end of the race and I became the first female to ever enter that race and the first female to ever finish it. So that was a huge achievement. And then I think just the fact that I haven't given up, it's not really a set achievement, but I definitely have days where my hip hurts and I go like, why am I doing this? I know my hip pain would be lower if I didn't do some of the more extreme motorcycle riding that I do. But I then also know that if I didn't do it, my mental health would be off a cliff. Because I get more pleasure from making the most of what I can do, even if I'm pushing myself maybe a little bit more than maybe some people would say I should. When I need more surgery, which I've been told with 95% certainty I will, I'll deal with it. I know that I've learned a lot about my mental health, about ways to find appreciation in the moments. For example, after that first night camping, which I mentioned, and we had the little campfire and it was like kind of this awakening of new gratitude. When I then did have to go back and be bedbound after more hip surgery, I think I've had 5 hip surgeries since that moment, I was so much more able to find just little things to put a smile on my face. And the world can seem so dark, but playing my favourite country music, as simple as some music, can lift my spirits. Having some sweet, tasty mango, cuddling my teddy, calling my mum and having a chat. And they're not big things, but if you can pick a whole load of little things that can put a teeny smile on your face, it adds up. And then the importance of goal setting. For me, I'm very, maybe you could call me like a dog and a stick or a donkey with a carrot. I like having something that I've locked my sights on. And it's okay if that thing is something I might never achieve. Sometimes I set ridiculously high goals that stretch me. And it's okay if I don't make it, but I'll be further than I would be if I hadn't tried. And sometimes you surprise yourself and you do make it, which is an even cooler experience. But for me, I always had to have something that I'm working towards. And when I talk to the students, I always use the idea of an elephant, where you have this big elephant goal. So when I signed up for Red Bull Romaniacs, which is one of the toughest hard enduro races in the world, when I signed up, that was an elephant. There was absolutely no way I had the skill to make it to the finish line of that race. But I'd set the goal, I'd put the money on the table, and I had a year to train. And by having that goal, it helped me make smaller goals. You don't eat an elephant in one, you have small bites, and work on my progression to be able to get to a point where eventually I'd be able to rock up to that race thinking, I'm going to make the finish line. Although I'm not sure I knew I was going to make the finish line when I got there, but I did everything I could to try and make sure I would. And I did make the finish line, which was just an amazing feeling.
Do you know something? Just reverting back to some of the things that you said there. I know that there are a lot of people out there today who are struggling in one way or another, and in recovery, and wondering where they're going to find the strength to get through it all. Do you have any words of advice for them?
I would say shift your expectations on yourself and be kind to yourself. For a long time, I was comparing myself to who and how I used to be. And that wasn't realistic. My body was never going to go back to how it used to be. I needed to reshift what I was looking for or looking at to give me that happiness. Prior to the accident, I needed extreme sports to be able to get myself, have my high or my happiness and my energy. But actually, by shifting my attention to what I could do, because a lot of the time you fixate on what you wish you could do and what you can't do, what you used to do, whereas actually just going, you know what, that door's shut, let's find something else to do. And it can be as simple as, if you're bedbound, finding a cool computer game that can entertain you for a few hours. I encourage you to try and do things that help you grow. So not just watching computer games, whatever, but finding things that will give you a smile, a happiness, a little bit of energy to reward yourself for having done your physio, for having done the hard things. So for me, I'm like a dog that needs treats. So I kind of persuade myself to do things because of a reward structure and the step towards the goals, etc. But I think so often it's not the people around us that are hard on us, telling us that we're failing and we're not good enough and we're broken and we're useless. No one tells you that. It's you with your own expectations on yourself. And I think very often we just need to reset them, set some new goals and be kind to ourselves. And it's totally normal to have a bad day. It's totally normal to have a bad week. But the reality is you need to try and be aware of when you're having a bad day or have a bad week and recognize it so you can start to do those things that go, you know what, Vanessa, I might have woken up on the bad side of the bed, but we don't need to be on the bad side of the bed all day. I have control over my mindset, over my attitude, over my actions. Let's do something about it. And as simple as going, you know what, I'm going to go and make a cup of tea. I remember how much energy it took to go and make a cup of tea. But that feeling, once you'd managed to make yourself a cup of tea, suddenly you've got a smile on your face. But it's such a simple little thing. You don't have to set a goal of going to climb Everest. It's all about the perspective of what you're battling in your life. And the other part so the main thing there is your expectations on yourself. You also then want to look at what you're looking at around you. If you are constantly looking at, let's just say for me, I wanted to kite surf and I'm constantly watching kite surfing, I'm going to set myself up for mental pain. So reshifting some of your social circles, changing who you follow or what you're looking at on social media, just to fill yourself with a good mindset of positivity towards your goals as opposed to this drain of the dragging on the past. And I really can't emphasize enough that the reality is that we all have bad days, bad weeks. It's normal, it's human. It's okay to not know how you're going to get to the end of the day. but just by being more aware of the fact that you're having that thought, you can make more actions and controls to shift it and change it and try and get out of that pattern. But be kind to yourself.
That's brilliant. Not to the same degree as you, but I have had to be put back together again, for want of a better phrase. And I'm smiling to myself here because everything you've just said there, do you know what? Incredible. As it's the little wins, isn't it? It's getting those little wins, constantly getting those little wins. And I too, I was constantly pining to go back to what it was that broke me. And my wife had given me a very hard no, it isn't going to happen. And, you know, and I did everything you've just said there. I shifted what I was watching on TV. I shifted what I was watching on YouTube videos, and, you know, shifted away from certain things. And it definitely did help. Listen, if you're not already doing so, make sure that you follow Vanessa's YouTube channels. I don't care what bike you ride, be it Harley, be it Triumph, be it Ducati, it doesn't matter. I will defy anyone to not find something on Vanessa's channel that isn't going to inspire you and make you realize there's a whole world out there. You, Vanessa, you've clearly fought extremely hard to get back to where you are now in life, your mental resilience, your positive mental attitude. And my favorite bit is this absolute refusal to give up. It's led you on to some amazing adventures, motorcycles, and then for anyone that's following you with the cars as well, with the rallying, you had the you know, that there seems to light your fire as well. And thankfully for us, you share all of these videos. So again, there's going to be a link here or here or here. I'll work out how to do that bit, but make sure that you follow her. So looking forward then, really open-ended, 2023, what's on the plate for Vanessa Ruck?
So I've got some big races on the rally side. I'm heading to Qatar in March for a bit of a warm-up, and then I'm doing the Morocco Desert Challenge, which is a full Dakar-style 8-day moving bivouac. It's going to be really, really tough. Now, I did the Tunisia Desert Challenge last year, and I survived it. I'm on a mission to race this one. So I'm massively working on my fitness, having a bit of a day off today because my hip's not liking my life choices, but it needs to get stronger. I need to get stronger. So I've got big sort of racing goals. I've then got some incredible adventures. Harley's obviously a big one for me. So I'm off to New Zealand, again with Gary. I keep mentioning Gary, but I love his trips. So I'm going to New Zealand at the end of January for 2 weeks on what am I on? Street King, Road King.
Road King.
Street
King.
Yes,
yeah. Road King.
Road King?
Road King.
What does Vicky Green ride?
Big Road King.
Vicky Green.
She got the spot. She got the Street Glide.
No, she's bigger than Street Glide. Is she? Road Glide. There's too many streets and glides and roads. It's a gorgeous red bike, and you'll see me on it in New Zealand. And then I'm also going to do a road trip in Romania, doing some of the Transvangard, whatever that road is. Some of the best roads in Romania, again on a Harley. I'm going to go to Iceland to do some off-roading. I'm very grateful for some of the opportunities that I'm going to have of riding motorcycles this year. I work more hours than anyone I know, but I get to have some incredible experiences, and I just hope my body will keep allowing me to go. And if it won't, I'll shift and I'll adapt, but I'll keep going down the road, that's for sure.
Brilliant. Vanessa, I've really, really enjoyed this. Again, for me, looking at you, it's like I know you because we watch you all the time. Thank you so much for joining me and Jared here. Just inspirational.
Absolutely. And I have to say this, Vanessa, you know, thank you so much for sparing us some of your time. I know it's valuable so early in the year because we got to ask you right at the start of it what you had planned.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, if anyone wants to find me, my inbox is also always open. If anyone wants to, chat to me about any of the things we've spoken about, or get any advice on anything, The Girl on a Bike or Vanessa Ruck on basically all the social media platforms. You can find me out there.
And the inbox, that is actually the case as well. I don't know if you remember my first email to you, Vanessa. It was like, is this actually you or does this go to somebody else? And you were like, no, it's me. So definitely get in touch with her. Vanessa, thanks very much. We'll let you get on here and do whatever it is you're going to do for the day. And good luck for 2023. We shall all be watching along with the hundreds of thousands of other people that do as well. And I hope it all goes really well for you. And of course, anytime if you ever come to Northern Ireland, make sure you hit us up because it's only a wee little place, and we can. It's a wee little place, and we can hook up and get a coffee.
Thank you.